Before we start, I just want to remind you that at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a question and answer. So I invite you that during the presentation, you send your question to the chat box so that we can go over them after the presentation. So the presentation will be about 20 minutes, and then we're going to have about 8 minutes of Q&A. Good, so let's start. So this is the 2025 WSP Snack and Learn webinar. And the title is the WSP PFASER, which is a patented boron-doped diamond electro-oxidation system to destroy PFAS in water, as well as eliminating perchlorate in water. Myself, I'm Dr. Valérie Léveillé. I've been in the industry since 2008. So it's about 15 years that has been dedicated to develop technology, including electro-oxidation technology, and more particularly boron-doped diamond technology. So I hope that today's webinar can be useful for you to learn more about this innovation. The agenda will be a PFAS background, PFAS typical remediation in water. Then we're going to move to lab scale electro-oxidation results. We'll describe a bit of the patent pending perchlorate removal process. Then we move to lab scale perchlorate results, pilot scale results of the PFAS and perchlorate, upcoming project, and a conclusion. So what are PFAS and where are they found? For those who are not familiar, PFAS stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They have a very strong CF bond that makes them difficult to break. They are a group of more than 4,700 organic compounds, and literally they're found everywhere since their production started in the 1940s. So firefighting foam, a non-sticky pan, waterproof clothing, stain-free surface, semiconductors, lubricants, surfactant, food packaging, cosmetic, it's just everywhere. The two first PFAS that were really regulated and studied was the PFOA, as well as the PFOS. We're going to come back to that later. Why they are a concern? Well, they are soluble and thus mobile to the environment, so they can travel far. They're found everywhere, as I mentioned, so it's air and the water, soil, plant, fish, wildlife. In the water, we're talking about nanograms per liter that can cause bad effects, and this is simply 10 to the minus 9 grams per liter. The main exposure pathway is ingestion and inhalation, and some will bioaccumulate or toxic to humans and animals because they affect the reproductive system, development system, immune system. They can impact several organs, and some are linked to several cancers. Regulatory framework, there's many across the world, but I just want to give you a highlight that regulation started in the 2000 years. It started with drinking water, which is the dominating one, and now we see regulation for surface, groundwater, sewer. It started with PFAS and PFOA, but now we see other PFAS being regulated, or at least having an advisory level. The water criteria will vary according to the water source, its usage, states, the location, and time. Just to give you an example, the USCP in 2018 set an advisory level in drinking water of 70 ppt for PFOA and PFOS combined. Then in 2022, there were an interim advisory level in drinking water that was much lower for PFOA and PFOS, 0.004 ppt, for instance, of PFOA. Then in 2024, after consultation, the USCP released a national primary drinking water regulation, maximum concentration level, applicable in 2029. And this time, not only they have PFOA and PFOS, but then they had other PFAS, such as PFHX and others, including GenX, the HFPO-DA, and an hazard index of mixtures of 2 of those compounds or more. So regulations are slowly moving, and they're changing. So we have to be very aware of that. So when we design a system. Also, the US EPA best available technology to meet the PFAS maximum concentration limit in drinking water, they released it in 2024, so that's quite recent. They showed that granulated activated carbon was one of the standard technology, ion exchange resins, reverse osmosis, and nanofiltration. All of those technology has advantage, obviously low equipment cost for activated carbon, but they have limitations such as for the activated carbon, when you need to meet very low concentration, you have high concentration of PFAS, you will have high operating costs, but especially high disposing costs because the media that are contaminated with the PFAS has to be disposed some way. So this is really a transfer technology. Ion exchange resin, similar, but moderate equipment costs. Either if you regenerate the resin, you will create a reject stream that you will have to dispose of or to treat thermally. Or if you just use single-use resin, you're going to have to destroy the resin thermally because it contains PFAS. So that's come with a high cost. Reverse osmosis, it's one step further. It removes short and long chain of PFAS, moderate to high capex, but has high operating costs because often you need to make a robust pretreatment before the membrane can fall. It's a high operating system. And PFAS will always be in the reject stream of the RO, so you still need to treat 10, 20, or 30% or more of the reject that contain PFAS. Nanofiltration is similar, remove short and long chain, moderate high capex. Again, high operating costs, you still have a pretreatment, membrane can fall, or it's relatively high pressure operation, and you still have a reject stream. So there are conventional technology, they're working, but we're thinking, and other people are thinking, can you do something better? And then destructive technology started to be discussed a couple of years ago. And as a matter of fact, the US EPA research brief in January 2021 mentioned a complete brief about electro-oxidation. But they say it's a technology in development that's already 4 years ago with limitation. And I'm glad today to show you that we've been working on those limitations at WSP and moving the needle further towards its commercialization. So they mentioned high electrode costs. Well, we're working with BDD electrode reactor supplier to reduce the manufacturing cost, and we hope that within the next 5 years, there will be a substantial reduction in cost. EPA said that there's perchlorate production. You have to be careful with that. Well, WSP developed a patent pending process to prevent and remove perchlorate while the PFAS is being treated. We are at the pilot stage for this process. Life cycle electrode costs. They say, well, they don't last long. We have selected a special electrode that with the supplier, we know it lasts at least 5 years and way beyond 10 years based on other application. So we're very confident that those electrodes are long lasting, and it's at the pilot stage right now. They said also mineral buildup on electrodes. Well, we incorporate a reverse polarity model that reverse polarity of the electrode and knock down any calcium deposits. And this is automatic. And in addition to that, there's a chemical cleaning place that is part of the system that if you need further cleaning, you can trigger that cleaning place automatically. So these are the things that kind of close the loop for the limitation. And I hope that the new brief that they're going to come out in 2025 will show that those limitations has been solved. The process of electro-oxidation, especially on boron-doped diamond electrodes for PFAS exclusion, is as follows. So this is a schematic showing the BDD anode and the cathode. In our situation, all our anodes and a cathode are BDD material. So when the PFAS meets the surface, it will have a direct electron transfer, and the PFAS will gain a plus. The water will also meet the electrode and create hydroxyl radical, OH dot. And then there's a change reaction that's happening where the radicals and electrons will meet the PFAS, and then a mineralization process will start. And of course, you can mineralize to 100% removal of PFAS, but it comes with a cost. So that's what we're going to explain later. But yes, it can finalize, it can convert the PFAS into the fluoride, water, and CO2. However, if you have chloride in water, Cl-, you will produce also chlorinated species such as chlorine, chlorate, chloride, perchlorate. We knew that from the beginning, and that's why we designed a process that prevents them as much as possible while the PFAS is being destroyed. On the cathode, you will have hydrogen production. Right now, we just escape it to the air in a safe way and secure, but eventually we can think about supplanting an energy production plant, for instance. So the electro-oxidation BDD electrodes have pros and cons like any other technology. The pros is broad applicability. Temperature, it can go up to 65 degrees Celsius of running temperature. PFAS concentration can be in the several hundreds of ppm, even thousands of ppm. It can treat co-contaminant in the same time as the PFAS. It destroys PFAS in water. Long chain for sure, and we have seen some of the short chain PFAS are also destroyed by the by the EO. It's a compact, modular, fully automated system. Treatment is below 60 minutes. It's just about the design and the full scale. So it could be a very rapid treatment. Low operating costs, electrode lifetime are quite high. We believe more than 10 years. It's just the market didn't use as much of that in PFAS, so we can confirm. We do not produce sludge. We don't produce spent filters of media where there's PFAS contaminated. Yes, we have maybe a core screening filter, things like that, but it's not used to treat PFAS. The cons, the electrode cost is still high. compared to other technology, but we can mitigate that with rentals, lease, and mass production eventually for the electrodes. Perchlorate production was a limitation, and we developed a process to remove 99.999% of it. This is a small setup. All our lab tests are done on a small setup with an HDPE bottles, recirculating pump, and EO reactors fed by a power supply. We've done lots of work on different real wastewater, especially groundwater contaminated with PFAS, and we were able to understand what was going on in the process in terms of adsorption and desorption of the PFAS, because it can affect the results. So today I'm going to present just a few samples treated with the EO lab setup that were mainly groundwater from airport, national park, and former chemical plant. The operating condition, we took many years to vary the operating condition. One of the dominating one was the current density. We play for low to high, and we status on a relatively low current density of 24 milliamp per square centimeter. And for the perchlorate removal, we're going to talk about that later, we needed to adjust the pH to a certain range of pH and add some hydrogen peroxide into it. So we play a lot with those variables to optimize the process. The first result we got, it was really to understand that the EO is a really good total PFAS or total organic fluorine mass destruction technology. They can abate very quickly the total mass of PFAS. And as you can see in this first example, the groundwater number 1, the PFAS destruction was from 1,666 ppb to 114 ppb. This is 93% removal. So all of the PFAS combined that could be detected. We did the same thing for the tough analysis, and we reached about 95%. So it's quite duplicatable. Other groundwater, like this groundwater number 2, we were very low in concentration initially, so the removal rate was low, not because the system is not efficient, it's just that it's not used in this high range of concentration where it's very efficient. So 19 ppd down to 9. So this kind of water, we say it's not really useful for the EO to use it because it doesn't use its maximum capacity. In other groundwater, this was a textile water, we had an increase of the PFAS, and we're like, okay, this is interesting because we think that maybe there were some polymer that contain PFAS, and we just oxidize them and release PFAS in solution. So for instance, textile water will not be a solution, will not be an application for the EO. Groundwater number 4 was a typical groundwater with enough PFAS in it. We got 51% removal. We could have go to higher removal, but with this application, we said EO was maximized at a certain level, and when the efficiency plateau, we use another polishing step afterwards. That's why we stopped at 51%, the treatment rate. In terms of individual PFAS and total oxidizable precursor, the top assay for the groundwater number 1, we could clearly see that the EO, at the beginning, there were not too much PFAS, but then when the EO comes in, this is the post-oxidation, the first line that you see there were a lot of precursors in dark matter that were not detected in the raw water, and the post-oxidation really boosts them. The EO did the same. So the EO oxidized them, and then by continuing the electro-oxidation, you remove them down. So you're removing liability in the water by converting everything to PFAS and then destroying them. And that removed 93% of the total mass. We're very excited by those results. There's groundwater number 2. It's a similar process. There were some precursors that were oxidized in the water by the BDD electro-oxidation to form perchloroalkyl acid. And that's the same thing. Almost nothing in the water, then we oxidize everything, and then we destroyed it. So depending on the application, it takes longer time to treat when you have precursors in dark matter, and less time to treat with the EO if there's nothing in the water except the PFAS to treat. This is another water, 50% removal. This one, we really optimize the EO combined with GAC to meet very strict states regulation, which was in the PPT level for PFOA as well as PFOS. So it's a combination technology we use there. So this was about PFAS. Now we're going to move with the perchlorate treatment to talk about more of this. So perchlorate is a problem, it's toxic, so we needed to find a solution so that we don't remove PFAS or destroy PFAS and then be stuck with another toxic compound. So we did develop a process that we're going to explain, and this process allows us to go as low as 0.00005 milligrams per liter. We're very excited to see how low we could go. The first step for the perchlorate removal process is scavenging the chlorinated species with the hydrogen peroxide in an acidic solution to prevent the perchlorate. You're going to say, why? Well, we've done a lot of research, and Yang in 2019 said that a fast kinetic exists between the chlorinated species and the hydrogen peroxides. Barisi and al. In 2022 said that higher pH would generate perchlorate. So what we did is we reversed it and we said, what about if we are going the opposite way and reduce pH? Can we really slow down the generation or even prevent it? So that's what we did. So normally on a normal water, when there's chloride and electro-oxidation, you will form chlorine radicals and then apocalypse ions and so on to chlorine gas, depending on the pH, in equilibrium with the ions and the acid. But if you add the hydrogen peroxide, you're cutting those reactions. And the peroxide will react with the chlorine and then bring the chlorine back to chloride. And then you don't go to chlorate, and perchlorate. So this is what we've done as a first step. And here you can see that for a given amount of perchlorate, the more you increase the hydrogen peroxide, the more you reduce the concentration. So it shows that this technology or this process is quite reliable. And the step number one, we've done lots of tests the last 3 years, and really it's about having the right pH range and having the right dosage of hydrogen peroxides. And this is really based on the water quality that we determine those things. So we really do real tests with real groundwater to find the optimal dosage. And we could go as high as 91% removal of the perchlorate to even 97%. So it went from 72 ppm to 1 ppm. It was excellent result, but it was not enough because in some application we need undetectable level. So we moved to the step two. Step two, we said, okay, what can we do to completely eliminate the perchlorate in the EU treated water? Well, we said, what about absorbing perchlorate on GAC in an acidic solution? You say, can really GAC, if you call a supplier, they're going to say, this is not made for absorbing perchlorate. Well, actually, doing research, we find out that Mahmudov in 2010 said that if you use the F400 GAC and you keep the pH at 2 to 4, you will be able to control the speciation of the activated carbon sites, surface functional groups, which will allow the perchlorate absorption. This is theory, right? But we tested it. We tested with real groundwater, synthetic groundwater, many different groundwater, and we said, wow, this is working. And actually, the EU treated water has a tendency to bring the pH to low pH in that close range. So we did that. We took the EU treated water directly going to the GAC, and we were amazed by the results. So this is initial concentration of the perchlorate, and this is the result that we got at the outlet of the GAC. And this was quick column tests, a couple of days and weeks, but what we did is we extrapolate the result as soon as we see the concentration of perchlorate increasing slowly, and we extrapolate the lifetime of the GAC, and we find out that in this situation, it could last about 40 days. That was pretty good for a simple process, quick to remove perchlorate and cheap. We have another example where it lasts 120 days. So it is cost efficient to use this kind of two-step process. Now we're just going to show some the PFASER first pilot study for PFAS destruction and perchlorate removal. So it was done last summer, 2 months duration. Capacity of the system was 9.6 cubic meter per day, so 2,536 gallons per day. It was for an all chemical plant, and the treatment time was very fast, only 30 minutes of BDD EO treatment to bring down the PFAS to a very low concentration, and then GAC did the polishing step. And you can see that the groundwater was quite contaminated. And this is the inside of the container with one of the EO reactor, very, very small. The results, we did many batch. It was not bad, 72% removal of total PFAS, all the way to 85%. And this were exactly the same operating conditions. So we're like, wow, it's good, but why is it going so high? Well, then we start looking at the influent concentration. And we find out that potentially that when the concentration of PF is very high, the EU, it's normal that it's higher efficiency because it's a mass transport limiting system. So the more concentration, the more contaminant you bring to the electrodes where the surface reaction happen, the more you will have efficiency. But then we saw some less good result, 48% removal, 52, and like, oh, what's going on? Well, for sure, there's a bit less concentration of PFAS in the effluent that could explain that. But we also look back at our operation and we realized that the reverse polarity system was not turned on during the pilot. Sorry. So we realized that probably there were some scaling of the at the anode and cathode, and that diminished the active life of the electrode. So it was not active. There was the activity was prevented. So for sure, if you keep electrode clean By activating the model, you will have a good removal rate, as we saw at the beginning of the test. I just wanted to show you that at the lab test, the groundwater number 4, we did test and we got 51%. This is the same water that was tested in the pilot at 85. So you can see here again, the concentration was lower than this one. So that could explain why the removal rate were different. That being said, what's important, the variability of the removal rate will change with the water concentrations and all that. But the effluent is what really matters. You want to keep it at a certain level so that after that, the polishing unit, in our case was a GC, could take it. And the whole point of doing this is that you remove all of the organics, all of the contaminants with the EO, we destroy it so that you have a very clean water to go to the GC to elongate its lifetime and to focus on the PFAS removal. This is individual result for the PFAS for the pilot test the last summer. EO alone, I just want to show you some. PFAS is quite good, 99.7% removal. PFOA not bad, 89.6% removal, only 30 minutes treatment. And even, this is the long chain, and even some small chain like PFBA was at 76% removal with the EO. HPA a little bit less, but still 34%, 42% for the PFOSA. So that showed that the EO is very effective at removing as much as possible the EO, and then the GC polished them all with amazing result, undetectable for everything. So that's what we're trying to do now, is to use EO as a bulk workhorse, 93%, 95% removal, and then the rest is done by polishing to always comply with regulation. We already are into detailed design for the PFASER full-scale system, an airport, groundwater, small amount, 4 cubic meter per day, with those objective of 95% total mass destruction, perchlorate removal, and we hope to do the construction soon. And the reason why the capacity is low is because this application is for a few wells that have several ppm of PFAS. So we want to destroy them, bring them to the background level, and then another barrier in situ can remove the PFAS to undetectable level. The PFASER, it's for PFAS destruction, but I just want you to know that electro-oxidation has many more potential, such as any difficult to treat contaminants. And we have proven another full-scale system here where we have complete lab scale, pilot scale. We're moving to the detailed design, and it's for a plant of 30 cubic meter per day of a filter press wash washer that contain ethanol, methanol, phenol, and acetone. And we are going to start the design in 2025 and hopefully the construction by 2026. And it's to show you that BDD electro-oxidation has other potential full-scale application. So in conclusion, the PFASER system that was developed by WSP destroys long chain and some of the short chain PFAS in water, doesn't generate sludge, does not use filters of media to remove PFAS. It destroys 95% of the total mass of PFAS and can meet applicable regulation when you combine it with the polishing steps such as GC. We form perchlorate if there's chloride in water, but we can prevent it by adjusting the pH, adjusting the current density, adjusting the dosing of hydrogen peroxide to completely remove it after the GC treatment. CapEx, I didn't talk about that, but to give you an idea, everybody say electro-oxidation, especially BDD, is expensive. Yes, it is, but it depends on your application and what you're comparing it with. Here, it's about $11,000 every time you treat a cubic meter per day, but it can be as high as $183 every time you treat a cubic meter per day. This sounds high, but if your alternative is to dispose at a high cost at $300 a cubic meter, you will win with the EO. And that's the application we're looking into. When you have a high cost of disposal or capital costs, or when you need to treat several contaminants together. The OPEX, it's in a few dollars per cubic meter all the way to $50 per cubic meter. And again, it depends what you're comparing to. If you have to dispose at $500 a cubic meter, you'd be very happy to have a system that has about $20 a cubic meter of operation. So we're very excited for what's going on in the full-scale design and installation coming up. And we hope that if you have any question or if you want to collaborate with us, we're very happy to show you what the system can do. So thank you so much for your time. And now I'm going to open the floor for the Q&A of this webinar. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, so I see a couple of questions. This is the first question, when the PFASER will be ready for commercialization. So right now we have done pilot testing with it, and we just need to do a couple of more pilot testing this year, full scale 24/7 to prove that the operational level is good. But because the components of the PFASER, it's all commercially available, pump, tank, the EO reactor is commercially available. It's been used in other applications since 15 years or more. We are confident that there's nothing there that is uncertain. It's more about putting together the process, and we have proven that already in pilot, that the perchlorate removal system works, the PFAS destruction works also. So it's more about a new technology now that we're releasing, and with the client, we are installing it. So this year is really the final pilot, and 2026 is basically commercial installation. But that's something you have to prepare a year in advance. So it's now, we always start with lab testing, a couple of months, pilot testing, 1 or 2 months, and then full detailed design. Question number 2. A hot topic is also microplastic presence in water. Would microplastic affect the PFASER processes anyway? We have right now a pilot study that might go ahead this year, where the client wants to treat PFAS, micropollutant, microplastic, and nanoplastics. So for sure, if the plastics are micro, the EU is good for destroying contaminants that are dissolved. And this is because they need to meet the surface and at the reaction. So if you have particles, a couple of microns and all that, it's not good to put that into the EU. It could foul the electrodes, and plus it's not going to do good. So it's preferred to have a system that remove the microplastic if they're solids. That being said, if they are at the nanoparticle level or very small and thin suspension, we will be able to see if we did an impact on them by treating them at the surface. So that's ongoing research, but I know it's a hot topic. Thank you for your question. Question number 3, what is the estimate treatment rate at what flow rate? So the electro-oxidation system that we develop, it's a batch system. It could be sequential semi-batch. Why we did that is I've done a lot of study the last 15 years where I tried to do a CSTR or a plug flow reactor, which is like flow through, versus a batch. And for the EO process, since the concentration is a big factor, you want to be able to present to the EO a high concentration every time you can. So a batch system is the best way because you always have a high concentration and then it's going down, than having a steady average concentration like in a CSTR. So that's why it's a batch system. So instead of estimated flow, there's no limit. We can treat 10 cubic meter, 100 cubic meter, 500 cubic meter per day. It really depends of how many reactor we can put in the location where the system has to be installed. The reactors are about 1 meter high and 40 centimeter wide, and you put them as filters, and the water goes into them as in parallel hydraulic flow. So there's no limit. The limit will be the cost effectiveness of using this type of reactor versus larger reactor eventually, like any other wastewater technology. But there's no limit right now. It will be about more about cost and the electricity installation, because the system needs power supply. So with the client, we need to talk early on about the electricity available on site and if they need to increase it to supply the electro-oxidation system. Number 4, have you tried to process on reverse osmosis on nanofiltration concentrate or ion exchange resin generated? No, we never did. I know that our colleague in other companies, this is what they're focusing on. I think it's a good application. We didn't have the chance to try it yet. I have some discussion with some client to do it, but it's a good application to do it because the concentration is high. My only worry is that the chloride, if there's chloride, it will be also high because you're concentrating everything. So now you will still have perchlorate produced and you will have to remove it. But this is something you can always fine tune during lab scale testing. But it's a very good application, especially for drinking water where you might not want to put the electro-oxidation in the main stream, but upstream as a first step. So yep, it's a good application, but we didn't do it yet. Thank you. We have more questions, but since we're running out of time, we can see that you will follow up. So yeah, that's it. So the seminar is finished. Thank you so much for your time, but please send your question and I will definitely send you back answer by email. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for attending this webinar. Have a nice day.